Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Hello fellow writers. It's been a while and today we're gonna do a sit-down video. I just want to talk about accepting criticism as a writer, getting feedback, and really my experience with that and how it has helped me as a writer and just improved my storytelling and my stories in general. It's good to have an objective perspective, kind of look at what you have to see if you've missed anything, to see if anything is confusing or inconsistent. And it's valuable because since we're so close to the story, sometimes we don't see if there's an issue. One thing that a beta reader said, I mentioned it in my other video about the writing process. She mentioned the POV issue because I thought I was doing third person omniscient. I wasn't. It was more like head hopping, and I didn't even know that. I was not aware. I thought I was doing a good job of separating the perspectives. If one character leaves, then it kind of jumps to this person, or if they go this way, then it jumps to that person. But I guess that jumping was not supposed to happen. And she let me know that it was difficult to even get through the story because of that issue. Even though she enjoyed the premise, she liked the idea, she liked the characters, and she really wanted to keep reading, but that issue was a roadblock. And she sent me articles and explained, this is the difference between these two, and this is why it's an issue. Of course I was embarrassed. Of course I was so embarrassed. And after reading those resources and then going through my story again, I was even more embarrassed. And I was hurt because she was like, I like the story and the characters, but I can't continue reading. And that really hurt me, that I was really embarrassed and it really hurt me. But I wasn't going to take it badly as like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, blah, blah, blah. No, I saw what she meant. And I was very, very grateful, and I let her know that I was very grateful for her feedback and for the resources, and I worked on it. I actually just ended up taking out some POVs. I was like, there's too many characters talking, and so I need to lessen that, which I have, and separate it out by chapters. So I made some changes with that. And I'm glad I did, because that improved the story. Imagine if I had just stayed in the embarrassment and the hurt and did nothing. My story would not be where it is now. And that was for the sci-fi story. And that's not even done, but even with the first about 20-ish chapters I have, I'm actually really proud of it. And I had another paid beta reader go through the first 16, I think, or the first 10, and they really liked it. And I was just really glad to not see the same criticism as before, because that showed that I made progress. And that's what I'm looking for, and that's what all writers should look for. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. You can feel how you want to feel, but that's just my opinion. My experience with beta readers has been largely positive. I think I've had really, really great feedback from beta readers who took the time to go over my story and give me great feedback. And it wasn't just, oh my gosh, this is so great, but even the things that I needed to work on, they would give me resources. Like, here's this article, here's this video. And I think that is really considerate of them, and something that I very much cherished to get, because it's not enough to just say you should work on this. Because I think for me, with those instances, I didn't really understand how to fix that issue, and I think I didn't really understand it very well. And so by them explaining it and giving me those resources, I was able to learn something. And I think that's why it's helpful. I know it can be daunting because this is our personal project. These stories and characters and everything, they're so close to our hearts, right? And if someone says something negative or can be perceived negative, it really gets us, you know. But I think we have to look at it a different way of how can this help me. Recently for my fantasy novel, Tippeth, in 2024, after draft 4, I sent it to a paid beta reader who was like a developmental editor as well. And she gave me some feedback about being immersed in the story. Like some parts of the story seemed distant in a way. And I didn't understand what she meant. Like I kind of got it, but I didn't understand what she meant in terms of my writing. And she gave some examples and I kind of got it, but I had to give myself some time away from the story. And eventually I went back to read some chapters and I was like, oh my gosh, now I understand what she's talking about. I get it. Because some parts just read as a description. Like, this is what's happening, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, those areas were supposed to be a first-person POV. I just want to explain a little bit more. So it didn't sound like the character herself was narrating everything and explaining how she felt or what she thought about a scary situation that just happened. It was just, this is where the characters are in this person's room. This is what they're doing. This is how they feel. It was simply a description of everything in that scene. You weren't really in the character's head. I've already talked about why first person for that story didn't even work, which that might have been like a big issue with it too, because I feel like I can write much better in third, at least for that story. But that was also a hard thing to try to learn as well, because I couldn't really see it in my own story. And I think that's the thing about being too into it, because I feel like for another book or someone else's story, if I was a beta reader for their story, I'd be able to catch it. So that's why that objective eye is necessary, okay? And I have so many more stories like that. Even with this fantasy story, people saying how they couldn't get my first person character. They really liked my other POV character, like they really, really liked her. And her chapters are written in third person. I didn't have any of those complaints that I had with the first person POV character, because multiple other beta readers also said the same thing about her chapters, that they were distant from her. They didn't really understand her motivations, what she wanted, and she felt reactive and not proactive. But with the third person POV character, they understood her motivations. They, I guess, felt that she was more proactive, a more well-rounded character. You know, they didn't feel distant from her. And so that's when I realized, okay, do I not understand the other character, or is it the way that I'm writing that may be the issue if they really like this character but not the other one? I'm just so grateful for those pieces of feedback, and I think as writers sometimes we just gotta slow down, look at it for what it is, and also take it with a grain of salt. There's some feedback that I just didn't accept. For example, how people like that POV character in my fantasy novel, the adult POV character, and some people were saying I should just have her have the story from her perspective, the entire story. I can't do that. That would change the story, the whole point of it, if it was just her POV throughout the entire story. So that I had to decline. Also, you have to be able to reflect on your own work and your own self and see if you're taking their feedback with confidence, or if you're, looking at it through fear, because it can be helpful and sometimes it's not helpful. And you got to be in the right type of mindset to be able to know that as well. But I would say, consider it and see, does this work for my story or not? I've also had a beta reader who just didn't like my story, didn't read it, and didn't tell me about it. And 2 months later, I had to email the person because I'm thinking, okay, maybe they're just taking a while to read it. They didn't even read it, and I'm like, why didn't you say anything? They didn't respond, of course. That was really rude. I think that's worse than someone giving me really bad criticism, because at least you're communicating with me and not ghosting me, you know? So that was definitely something really hard, but I just wanted to kind of share that for any writer out there dealing with criticism. And you know, it's definitely okay to take some time to heal yourself if you feel bad after reading some feedback from beta readers or anyone or editors, anyone who is looking at your story. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible person, a terrible writer. Even if you need something to improve on, just look at it as this is something positive. This is something that can help you. This is something that can help your story. You know, when you look at it in a positive light, I think that kind of helps your emotions to dial down a bit so you don't get too hurt by what they may say. So I really hope this was helpful or encouraging, and I'm hoping my next video will be a vlog, but we'll see. Thank you again for watching. Bye.